Good morning. The meeting of the City of Mexico Beach Charter Review Committee will come to order, please. Tammy, can you do roll call?
Okay, Jennifer Ward.
Here.
Quinn Jenkins. Here. Steve Cox.
Here.
Lee Elsey.
Here.
Mel Schmigelski.
Here.
Lisa Logan.
Here.
The minutes to the meeting were in the packet that was sent out. Does anybody have any corrections, additions to the minutes?
I did.
Can I get a motion to have them approved, please?
I'll move to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right. So the first thing on the agenda is any unfinished business. Michael, you want to go start there with us, please, sir?
Sure. So the committee had discussed quite a few changes. Staff still finalizing those. The way I envision this working in future meetings, when there's more than just a couple of days in between meetings, is we'll have the full package prepared and you can review and formally approve or make additional changes. So we don't have those tied up quite yet. So we'll be able to bring those back. And then I know that the committee talked about wanting to keep talking about form of government. That item's in the packet. So I think this would be a great time to talk about that right now. Finalize that direction. We'll come back to that at the next meeting with exactly what y'all want.
Okay. So in the, I'm going to go from there. In the packet, you'll see, I'm a kind of a visual person, so it's very visual. But I went through and I found a really good representation of the different forms of government spelled out. It should be in your packet towards the back. It's several pages. And it actually was very, very good. Because I know that one of the things that we did talk about or wanted to try to finalize before we went through all of the paperwork was to have the form of government we were trying to move towards. Either keeping it as it was with a city administrator into the mix or moving towards a city manager, which is a council manager, excuse me, which is what was brought up. And Mr. Elsey brought up a really good point. He asked the question, what, with the council manager, I think your question was, Mr. Elsey, what is the reason not to go that route? I believe that was your question.
Basically.
So, I know that wasn't verbatim how you asked it. So, I went back and did some more research and reading. Personally, I like to keep it the way it is. Week manager, add a city administrator. When I go to vote, I want to vote for someone, council members and mayor, that are going to look out for the best interest of our city. And I feel like when we have it as a council manager or administrator, the administrator or manager is the one who's making all the decisions, and us as citizens don't really feel like we have a say. That's my personal opinion. So I feel like we need to figure this out a little bit so that we can move forward.
I want to keep the politics out of the day-to-day operations of the city.
And that's what
And
having
that's
the
been a
council
problem.
manager.
The
Yes,
council manager
I would-
achieves that.
Yes, that is
It's
true.
the council's job to set the policy, set the budget, set the rules and everything else. And that's what the public needs to understand. They got to go to the council to get that stuff changed. All the city manager does is go by the direction of the city council. So if you have a city manager who's not doing their job according to what the council wants, then they can get rid of them. And that happens a lot, right, Mr. Ryan?
That's correct.
Okay. Good point. And you have more experience in this. So would it be a manager or an administrator? Because that was something else I came across, that there's two,
Totally different.
they are totally different.
Yes. We have always had an administrator, never a manager, and it
Right.
does go back to 1985, I think,
Yeah.
because it was called a town administrator just as the city was called the Town of Mexico Beach, and it was the Town Council. So it didn't start in 2005. We've had an administrator for, what, 40-something years, 30 years? And there's a big difference. The manager has more power. The administrator takes direction from the council, which I think in our case is necessary. And the council has more control than with an administrator than with a manager.
I think that's a semantic thing, because a lot of times you look in the publications about the difference, there really is no difference for the most part. The difference comes in how it's worded in the charter, not by the definition of the word itself.
Okay, we'll have to agree to disagree with that because I think the difference in the semantics is important.
Mr. Ryan, what's your input on this?
Well, in my opinion, the manager / administrator are one and the same. I forwarded a copy of the Howard Hill charter to Mr. Manning that showed the town administrator under the council manager form of government. So there are examples of that language in charters that I forwarded for your review.
Did we get those, Michael?
I don't think we had that in the packet.
Since we're on the topic of, just basically opinions of the forms of government, I think the council manager, if you look at the hierarchy tree, to me it makes more sense because even with the weak mayor format or the hybrid weak mayor that we supposedly have had, you've got the mayor and council with different roles as to who they hire and who they appoint. Whereas if you consolidate the role, fundamentally you're making the mayor a chairperson and a figurehead for the city. Yes, the mayor still signs contracts and that sort of stuff, but under that form of government, it seems to be more streamlined and clear as to who's reporting to who.
Also, we can't go by this
No, not
exactly, so
Right.
don't be fooled by this because this is not what we do, so.
But since
Right.
we're talking about charter revision, it's something we could do or could recommend.
Correct, yes.
I just think you're looking to keep the politics out. You're never going to eliminate the politics of it, but if you erase all the vague lines of who's doing what or who's responsible for what, and you say, look, the 5 of you are responsible equally.
Well, my concern comes from past experience here. I don't want an administrator who does things that I believe should be brought to the council, who feels that his power gives him the authority to do things without coming to the council. Don't ask me for an example because right now I can't think of one, but I've seen it in the past. When I want someone in control of my particular government, and I'm excluding everything but Mexico Beach here, I want to elect those 5 people, and I want them to have the ultimate power as to what happens. The council gives direction to the administrator. If there is a major thing that I think should come in front of the council, how are we going to know what's happening if that manager, administrator has enough power not to bring it to the council?
Well, his power should be specifically spelled out. He's got a spending threshold of what he can spend. If it goes above that, it goes to the council. He runs the, all I can give you is the example of Port St. Joe. And they are, in their charter, they're a council manager type of government. And the main aspect that the manager does is he runs the day-to-day operations. He hires and fires your basic employees, and he has a spending threshold. If he can't go above it, if he does, it has to go to the council. All major decisions are still brought to the city council. I mean, besides day-to-day stuff and that spending threshold, everything goes there. He seeks direction from the council for primarily any major decision.
I mean, he follows the ordinances that they do, and if there's any exception to those ordinances, he would have to ask the council for that.
Well, the ordinances are the ordinances.
Right.
If he would like to have a change in something, and he thought it was a good idea, he would bring it to the council. All major decisions are made by the council.
Just like any citizen could come to the council with an idea for a change to an ordinance.
Sure.
Really, fundamentally,
So what we have is a weak mayor system, which I agree, as a voter, I would prefer the people at the table, I had some say in it. I got to have my voice in it. And if the administrator has to answer the council, then what are we looking to change? We just did the job description, brought it to the council, and they voted it. Am I missing something?
No,
Okay.
no.
I don't think there is.
Yeah.
Just
So there's
my
a-
opinion. You guys are the ones that are gonna make the recommendations. Just the way that it was running is okay. Just it's led confusion, and it appears that every 10 years or so, a new mayor gets elected and sees that sentence in there and thinks they should have way more power than they have. And that's led to the confusion, in my opinion. I don't think there needs to be a lot of major changes here.
Decide to
I watched it,
line
sure.
that, okay, line
Yeah.
that sentence out. I figured you had.
That's fine.
but I think this is productive discussion going forward for.
Absolutely.
If
We don't have to do this.
If we want to do something really productive for the city, come to these meetings and trying to eliminate what we've had for the last 3 months, 10 years from now.
We need,
Yeah.
at the end of this thing, I'm going to say something in my opinion, there needs to be no confusion whatsoever about who does what, who has what power.
And who's
We-
accountable for what? That's, I think that's what, I had several people reach out to me and say, we want to make sure that accountability's in there. If something goes wrong, who's going to be the one holding the stick, so to speak?
I mean, I think you do have that. You know, the voters, they don't like the way the council's making decisions, they can vote them out. That's the ultimate accountability.
Well, exactly.
And if the city administrator / manager does something wrong, or the council is accountable to hold their feet to the fire.
All 5 of them.
All five.
Right.
Equally.
All five.
Right.
So then it kind of, this is just my view. Think of our federal government. It's easy for everyone to, regardless of who's in the White House, to throw stones at the president.
Yes.
He's at the top, he's ultimately accountable. But his powers are ultimately, he can write all the executive orders in the world, but the legislative and judicial branches, they kind of try to keep him in the middle of the highway. Doesn't always work, but it has pretty good for 250 years.
Well, over the course of the last several decades, the president's power in this country has gotten a lot more.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But the
It's
voters
evolved. It's
will
evolved.
ultimately decide when that changes. I think we're charged now with what we've witnessed. Do we want to stay embroiled in this muck? It'll come up again in 10 years. Lisa knows it will.
Yeah.
Or do you want to fix it?
I think it's the goal of this
I
committee
think-
should
The
be
goal
to
is,
fix
the
it.
goal is to fix
So
it.
don't-
Taking one sentence
So we don't have
out
to do that.
is not going to stop infighting, and you're always going to have heated debates among 5 independent thinkers. But I don't know that taking one sentence out of the language is going to fix our problem.
No,
Okay.
I agree with you on that, and I think that's why I wanted to kind of bring this up again, because the next steps in the subsections are going through and spelling out their jobs. But the mayors, the council members, and I think just having in the back of our mind which way we're going to go will help us with making sure the jobs in the charter are spelled out. That's kind of where I was going with it, so.
All right, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. When we go to the ballot with this, whatever it is we end up going with, I think the more, I say the term radical, I think the more radical move we make, which changing the form of government can be considered a radical move. I think that is going to subconsciously influence a lot of voters who are going to say, oh my God, we're changing everything. We can't allow this.
Scare them.
And it's going to scare them off. So just keep in mind how the list of changes that we propose are going to appear to the voters. Whether you think it's important or not, it does have an influence on them. So that's not a good reason not to consider changing it, but do we want to make what will be considered a radical change at this point, or do we want to go with what we've got that we've used that has worked, more or less, and then maybe in another 10 years, or whatever we decide the next review should be, in 10 years, do they look at that? Because I think you might want to consider, while you're taking some big steps here, don't just try to change the entire document at one time.
But that's a valid point.
From a voter's standpoint.
That's a valid
And I think you brought an excellent point up last week too. That word weak, the public perception of that word sometimes is misconstrued. However, if you want to put it in here, I understand that we should, because that's how we're operating. Stop with a hybrid and just say we are a weak mayor system.
And then it's going to be our job, somebody's job, to help educate the voters as to what that means as opposed to any other term.
And it's
Because
not radical.
no, that's
Sure,
not, because
right.
there are two recognized forms, weak mayor, strong mayor.
Right.
So you've got to get over that perception.
I agree.
All I'm saying is just don't throw a whole lot of confusing and radical things out to the voters at one time,
Blow their
because
minds.
it's gonna
Keep it
get
simple.
people, keep it simple.
Yeah, keep it too much.
Oh, yeah.
People are just gonna turn off and go,
They're
no.
Exactly.
We're passing out those two example charts as well, so you can either rely on those today or in future meetings, but I want to go ahead and get those to you now.
There's two sections.
Yeah, they were separated. I was just
Two different
I was
charts.
being foolish thinking I had to do.
Oh, I did the same thing. Okay, gotcha. I took 3. Look at Article 1. Section-
Not necessarily something
Here's
we-
the other
right now,
mistakes.
but to have handy.
Right? Section 1,
Part 1, Charter 1,
Part 1.
this is.
Well, since we're having the discussion
this is
about
two. Let me see.
ultimately what's going to be presented to the voters, I don't think there's anything wrong. Once this committee kind of does its work and sends it to the council, I think the city would be obligated before the council makes a decision to at least, if we did recommend changing our form of government, to then send an explanation of what the difference in those two forms are to the residents, to the voters.
Actually, we hadn't gotten to this, but at some point, once we've made all of
You know, an
our,
explanation.
right, we need to do a workshop after it's all done and the council has approved and disapproved our suggestions, and we've got like the final copy before we go to send it for the referendum. We need to have a workshop, a public workshop, where everybody comes in and we review everything with them, almost like what we're doing, section by section, and explain our reasoning for these changes and why we, as a committee, felt like these were good changes, and explain. And that's our point in the process, to explain why we're
Right, right. And I don't think we can discount how valuable, we got two gentlemen
Oh,
here
yeah.
with
Oh, yeah.
tons of experience. Yes.
And, you know, when you hear people with the same background making the same recommendations from different perspectives, I think it's something we gotta really consider.
Right. One is a resident, and one has no skin in the game, so to speak.
Right.
He's completely neutral. So.
Right.
Manager. We handed out copies of the Haverhill and Keith County Beach Charter. Those are examples of the phrase "weak mayor, form of government." I don't like that phrase. I think you're going to run risk of the voters being turned off by that phrase. But that's my opinion. You asked me my opinion, I give it to you. It's an example of a weak mayor form of government with a city administrator in the charter. There's a lot of discussion about power. The council manager / administrator form of government, the power is still with the elected officials. If you go the route of inserting the administrator manager into the charter, you need to spell out the duties and responsibilities of that individual in the charter, while still certainly spelling out the duties and responsibilities of the mayor and the city council. So, as the gentleman talked about, the idea of a professional manager is to get the politics out of managing local government. There needs to be someone that can run the day-to-day operations, but the mayor and the city council are the policy. They are the board of directors. The manager or administrator is the CEO. So that's the role that the manager is going to play. If you go down the road here to Parker and Springfield, they don't have a manager. They're having troubles getting through a hurricane recovery. A professional manager will help the community recover. That's just one great example that I have to share with you as you deliberate this issue. Thank you.
See, so what you're saying is you just leave it mayor council form.
It can be.
Just say that without the weak or the strong or anything, just
In my opinion, that and $1.50 at Starbucks, get your cup of coffee, is adding weak into your charter and putting it on the ballot. Weak turns people off.
I agree with that, and it's really about a bunch of semantics. You just say mayor, council, form of government, and then you spell out the powers everybody has, and you don't have to have the word.
That's my opinion.
Makes sense.
I'm not sure how up to date it was, but I looked at the League of Cities and I looked at all the cities in the state of Florida, and Mexico Beach is listed as weak. The word weak is in there. So again, I don't think we're proposing a huge change.
That's not definitive. That's just the League of Cities looked at our charter and determined that's what it means.
Sure, again, I'm going
They're not-
on public perception.
I looked at the same map, and I went through some, and there are some that are wrong there. But they've already
Yeah.
gone to other forms of government.
Yeah, I found that is, just because they say it's so, don't make it so.
Okay. This is a lot to read, so we'll have to come back and, okay.
So, is this what I'm hearing? That there is some at the table that would prefer it to spell out either manager or administrator, council, form of government. Is that the correct language, you guys?
Council manager.
Council manager, form of government. And there are some at the table that are suggesting that we can leave it the way it is and just specify what the duties of those parties are. Is that what I have just heard? Is that what I heard?
That's what I hear.
Is that what I heard you say? Okay.
I think, not to interrupt, but I think we're going to have to, either way, we're going to have to clarify and specify duties as part of it.
Duties, correct.
I mean, that's kind of been a cloudy issue in our old charter, it would appear.
Yeah.
Because of one sentence.
Thank you, whoever put that in.
I mean, everything else is kind of spelled out.
But are we
All
just
powers
eliminating
vested
that
in the city
sentence?
council.
Is that what we decided?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's one of our changes for sure.
Okay.
Yes.
And then we just need to vote, leave it as is, or
I
change
don't
the
think we're
language?
quite there yet.
Okay.
Part of what I was thinking in this conversation was so we could figure out where we needed to go and the job descriptions. But then again, maybe we do need to go ahead and vote and see where we stand. I don't,
Can I ask Mr. Ryan? Your personal opinion with that, and your professional opinion, manager council,
I certainly support the council manager form of government.
sorry, I keep doing it backwards.
And again, it's clear the legislature has a role and duties, and that has to be spelled out what those are. The professional manager runs the day-to-day operations of the community, because it's a municipal corporation. It's got to be run day-to-day. And the manager has his or her limits of spending, has his or her ability to hire and fire. Some cities, the town clerk or city clerk is appointed by the elected body. Others, the manager. One community that I managed, the police chief was appointed by the city council. Made it for a little challenging for the manager to interact, because when they disagreed, well, I'm going to go run to the council. And that makes it for a challenge for that type of government, but it does work in some cases. There's also a code of ethics that a city manager must adhere to. And there are managers that are brought up on ethics charges by the International City Managers Association that fail to adhere to those code of ethics. One great example, my wife is very politically astute, and she wants to sign a petition for Billy Bob to run for city council. Can't do it under the council manager form of government. Code of ethics is myself and my family can't get involved. Even if it's just putting somebody on the ballot, it gives the perception that the manager is supporting that candidate. And we have to stay neutral. And that's what the code of ethics is all about. It's giving the manager guidelines on how to operate their community.
Thanks.
Is that not similar to a job description? In any position, nepotism, or, you know, have you been locked up for anything? You know, like, I'm just looking at it from, like, teaching and coaching perspective of, you have team rules and staff rules. And sometimes you like it to be a little bit loose, because each year you may want some wiggle room. You know, in the long run, what is the difference between putting it down on paper versus whoever's at this table saying, okay, let's meet and just run over this job description and I'll agree on it? Because if it's in the charter, I just feel like maybe you're stuck.
The charter's not going to give a total job description. It's going to give
parameters.
It's going to give some parameters. The job description is going to get more detail. The job description may say, Mr. Ryan, every Thursday at 3 p.m. go stand in the corner.
Right.
Okay, then that's in the job description.
We also have a job description of the administrator via ordinance.
That's what I'm referring
We do.
to, Glenn, right? So that's the ordinance part of it. So, for example, Michael's coming to apply for this job. Does he have 5 bosses or does he have 1? That's in that job description and in that ordinance that the council voted on.
5.
Right. So that's my question. What are we modifying? If that ordinance is passed, what are we looking to put in black and white that could also cause another hiccup or confusion? That's what I'm asking.
Right now, today, the city administrator is not included in the municipal charter.
Right.
You have an opportunity with this rewrite to add it,
Yeah.
if you choose. And I've given you 2 sample cities that have done that.
Okay. Thank you for that. No, that's.
No, I think-
And go ahead, Scott. Steve, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that the point you made about different cities or towns, the mayor or council appoints this position that reports direct to them, and how that takes the manager, administrator out of the loop. Basically, effectively, it can make you adversarial with that employee. And anything we can do to prevent that, because, in the past, there have been issues where mayors or council people have had issue with people that work for the city.
And it can get very challenging for the manager. Give you another quick example. I had a clerk who was in charge of publishing the municipal newsletter. It went out every month. And it kept getting delayed, and kept getting delayed, and kept getting delayed. And then as the manager, I said, where is what's the status of this newsletter? Well, it's in printing. Well, it's been in printing for 2 or 3 weeks now. What's the problem here? Well, I'll have to check on it. Well, I finally had up to here with the excuses, and I said, we're going to lunch, and then after lunch, I'm taking you to the printer, and we're going to find out what's going on. Got to the printer, and the printer knew nothing about it. So then I had to go to the elected officials to explain what has transpired. What do you all want to do about this? Because it's not my employee.
One thing to keep in mind, I mean, if you try and spell out all the things that the administrator's job description and duties in the charter, number one, to her point, you have like a 3-page ballot initiative that's going to be really confusing to people.
Yeah.
I asked that at the start.
and the city council, via ordinance, if they didn't like the way things were running, could always change the way. If you put it in the charter, then it's in the charter.
That's my point, yeah.
I just look at it as what has caused the confusion
That
and
one.
caused the problem over the last 3 months, and apparently in 2013, 15, back again, every time there's a new mayor. It's not one sentence, everything else pretty much
Yeah.
is described. All powers vested in the city council, the mayor is the ceremonial head of government, signs deeds, contracts, and stuff at the direction of the city council, and that's it. And you take out that one sentence. It has been the confusion. That's all.
I understand.
And that's true.
So to keep it simplified, just correct me if I want to make sure I'm hearing things properly too, as well. Keep it as it is, mayor, council, for simplicity, for this particular review, mayor, council, with the city administrator, and we can decide whether or not we're going to add it to the charter. That's a different subject. But as of now, I'm hearing, keep it city manager, council,
Mayor, council.
mayor, council, thank you, with the city administrator added in to, as well, into the charter. Do we want to add it in the charter?
I think we should. Do you think we're ever going to go away from our quote administrator
I
or
don't.
manager?
I don't. I agree with you on that. I don't think we're going to go away from
I
that.
think you should have that. Why would you ever want to blow that up? That makes no sense.
And then what everybody needs to do would be to look at that ordinance that sets forth what the city administrator's duties and who he reports to and how he runs the day-to-day or she runs the day-to-day operations. And then if you want to change that, or, that could be something in the future.
Well, we got 2 people here, and I'd like to ask both Mel and Mr. Ryan, in your careers, in an average week, how much interaction did you have with mayor and council members in an average week?
A lot.
More than you want?
Oh,
Talking to them every
well,
day.
I don't want to say more than I want. I mean, you need their feedback. You have to speak with them one-on-one to figure out what they're thinking and what direction
Because
they
you
think.
have to speak with them.
Right. Keep in mind that sentence we took out that's caused all the consternation over the years. When the city was first chartered back in the 60s, the administrator wasn't even thought of at the time. So the mayor had to have those duties. We've evolved. And so we are going to continue to evolve. And the only way to do that, in my humble opinion, keep politics out of the day-to-day operations of the city. You cannot do that unless you go council manager.
talked about, I'm an open book. I'm very transparent. I would communicate with the mayor and the council almost daily when things going on. Because the last thing I want is someone go up to the mayor and say, Mayor, what's going on over here on 33rd Street? The mayor, I don't know. I mean, what's that make the mayor look like? So it's communication that's part of being a professional manager. Every Friday, I would publish what I would do little snapshots of things going on in the community with sometimes pictures of Public Works putting in a grill at a park or the fire department doing something with the kids in summer camp. But every Friday, they would get what I call Friday fastbacks to give the elected official a snapshot of what's going on in the community.
Mr. Manning, you have been doing that, right? Bi-weekly?
We do that.
Right.
So it's communication to the elected officials that was daily and weekly and manager reports. I mean, my manager reports when I got to Indian Harbor Beach were pages long of things going on in the community the prior manager didn't do. And also, if I may, the Haverhill charter that I handed out, page 4, has 2 paragraphs on the town administrator that you could copy and paste and put in your charter, if that's your pleasure.
It's this thing. There we go.
Oh, I got a key.
Page 4.
Is there an extra one of those?
Here.
Yeah, there you go. I got it. Thank you.
I understand the reluctance to make that change, but both Mel and Mr. Ryan see from their professional standpoints feel that that's very strongly that suggestion to go to manager council.
If we make too, like, back to Lisa's point, if we make too big of a change,
I-
and the voter, if we have to really get out there and explain to people what this is, and, they might be afraid of a huge change. And even though it's not really a huge change, it's still be the way everything's been going on.
Yeah.
It's still basically what's been going on for
Yeah.
20 years, right? I mean,
Yes.
or since we put an administrator
Correct.
in place.
It won't be much, in reality, it won't be that much different, but on paper, it might seem like a huge radical change. And we'd hate to have them just out of hand, go, no.
Clarification that the 5 people that are ultimately elected to sit at this table twice a month and whenever else there's a special meeting, we got to make it clear that they're still going to have the ultimate authority of running the city.
Absolutely.
Because the 5 of them can make that person go away at a moment's notice if they're not happy.
3 of them can.
Well, yeah. All it takes is 3, right?
The second example that I provided was Key Colony Beach, and on the bottom of page 5 and the top of page 6, again, 2 very short designations of a city administrator appointed by the mayor and the council. The administrator shall perform the duties as assigned by the mayor and council. If that's the route you would like to go, that could be another example of a simple language for your chart.
Yeah, it's simple.
And I'm looking at our ordinance for our city administrator here that I printed off in my book. Pretty much, this is just more succinct. I like the idea of having city administrator in the charter, personally. That's my personal opinion. So, and I agree with Lisa in that too big of a change is gonna scare people. So,
Because you're right, if you don't put the city administrator in the charter, the city council can vote to get rid of it.
exactly,
future, right?
exactly. So
So maybe I think you're probably right.
But also, and my thought is, it's a logical step in moving towards, in 5 years, if we do another review in 5 years, or whenever we decide 10 years, to move, the next step would definitely be a council manager form of government. Even though technically, almost, you're gonna be operating that
Like
way
that.
Yeah.
with these changes we're talking about making. So it seems like that would be the easiest and simpler for the people, the residents to understand as well. That's my opinion, so.
Well, if your goal is to cut off a dog's tail, do it once, and not have to keep cutting and hurt the dog every time you do it.
Well, the dog's tail is that one sentence that really screwed things up.
Well, I disagree in that the reason is consistency is what makes local government work. You know, when you talk about being scared of language in the charter, people should also be scared when elections happen every year and new council members are on the board. That could change the direction of what the goals and vision of the city is, and that happens every year. If you have a city manager in place, then that is a consistent thing that the staff looks towards to make sure things are done on a day-to-day basis, on a consistent basis. If you have an administrator, as defined in these charters, then the city council, as it changes, can completely change the direction, which doesn't always help staff when they're trying to do their jobs daily.
If we ultimately make that suggestion, you're going to be the voice of
You're the spokesman,
the
that's
spokesperson.
Absolutely.
I hear you loud and clear, and I think about it from a private sector perspective. You know, let's say whatever field you're in, and basically every year you're getting 2 or 3 new voices that you're, quote, reporting to. Who would want to work under those conditions? And I think we discussed putting in there, changing it to a 4-year, which I think would be great for stability, and still having, alternate elections so that your whole council's not
Changing.
changing. But I'm on board with, if all we're doing is making recommendations,
Correct.
and I say, if we really want to do our job, let's just do our job. Ultimately, having a professional manager, administrator, I don't think if you were sitting on city council and you got 2 licks of sense in your head, you would certainly take the input of a professional as part of your thought process.
You
now-
cannot count on common sense operating in this town.
That's true, but when, at least, no disrespect, but Mexico Beach is no different than any town.
I'm not
It-
saying
it's
it
got
is,
different
but I'm
opinions.
saying in Mexico Beach, do not count on common sense.
So I just think if we have a clarifying act that we can do that says, this is what this body's responsible for, that's what that person's responsible for. And I don't think taking that one sentence out is gonna do the job. I support Mel's idea. I think we'll just go for it, recommend it, and if it gets shot down, it gets shot down.
Okay, on that, and this is going off on a different direction, are the recommendations of this committee just recommendations to the council, and is the council then going to decide which recommendations go on the ballot?
That's the way I understood it from
Yes,
day one.
that's how
Yeah.
it works.
Huh.
Just like P and Z.
That, yeah, that was the discussion from day one, what you just said.
Yeah.
The council has to pass an ordinance basically saying this is what we want.
Correct.
what our-
There's a charter amendment ordinance that the city attorney would prepare.
Correct.
So once
Okay.
we come up with the changes, then it goes to the council and they accept or don't accept, then it comes back to us to go through the ones they didn't accept.
Why would it come back to us?
Yeah, why would it come back here?
That was my understanding, but if that's not correct, then, for us to come up with something, decide if it's gonna go to the referendum or not. Because it has to go, they have to approve everything, all the changes completely before it goes to
Yes.
a referendum. That's my understanding.
So if they don't like it, they can just take it off.
Yes.
Absolutely. The only other way to get around that is a citizen petition, but they have to do the work of getting the charter together, and that's a yeoman's task right there.
So we definitely need to keep that also in the back of our mind, is that whenever we put this all together and finalize it, what we present to the council, we want to do it so that, in hopes that they will. So that goes back to the thought process of the radical changes. Will they, I mean, we have to think about the council too. I mean,
Oh, I'm thinking about the council, and I think there's probably votes on there that would say, look,
And in the end, it's
I'm giving them credit for having common
And
sense.
in the end, just explain, it's really not that radical.
It's
change.
not.
It's the way Mexico Beach has ran for a long time. We're just codifying it, so.
We don't need weak terms in our.
No, I agree with
If
that.
you stayed with that, I think you're still just.
Well, it's not in there
spreading
now.
the layer
Okay,
of-
so, let's vote to leave it as is and then make the suggestion that we outline the city administrator's role, just like the example given to us.
in the charter, add it to the charter with it not being an ordinance.
Right. Is that what we're,
I don't know that what you just said is what Steve and Mel are suggesting.
Yeah.
I'm suggesting.
They want to,
Yeah.
okay.
I think it's like a Band-Aid, just rip it off.
It'll hurt just one.
and in the end, it's really not gonna hurt, because it's
It's not
really the
I
same
agree.
thing.
Yeah.
Just for clarification, I don't think the intent is to repeal the ordinance that spells out in detail the duties and responsibilities of the administrator.
No.
No, it's to
We
add
just want
to
to mention the administrator
Correct.
in the
the
I
charter.
heard repeal.
Yeah, so that that in the future, the city council can't just say, nah, we're done with the administrator.
Yeah.
Because if we don't put it in the charter, they could do that. And I'm not talking about this specific council, it could be a council 20 years from now.
No.
Who none of us know.
Right.
And fundamentally, by going to council manager, we're not changing technically we'll call them the real duties of the mayor, in that the mayor's still gonna sign contracts, the mayor's still gonna do what's lined out under the description of the mayor's role. We're just giving clarification for hierarchy so that we don't have a situation, and we all know it's gone on here for years and years and years, where council people are going to department heads who work under the administrator and directing them to go do something down on Fourth Street.
That's in the ordinance.
Yeah.
I mean, that's in the
Ordinances
ordinance,
were put in place to
specifically
stop
says that council members have to go to the administrator
Yeah.
who deals
Well,
with
but that's
this
not been
department.
happening. We know it.
That's a matter of enforcement.
Yeah, I mean, it's already written,
Yeah.
it just hasn't been followed necessarily. the way
So
it
in
should.
that case, you have to have a pretty strong administrator or manager to sit across, if Mel were the perpetrator, and say, stay away from Tommy. Tommy knows how to do his
Exactly.
job.
That has not happened.
So
That's a whole nother subject.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so let's bring it back in for a second. All right,
The only other thing I would like to say about it is, let's not forget about the sentence that has caused all of the confusion.
we dealt with that last
We
week.
dealt with
it. All right.
That's
not-
the recommendation to be
Okay. All right.
removed.
Yes.
That was done last week, so thankfully we don't have to deal with that. So, by a show of hands, let's just do it this way. By a show of hands, who would like to have what we currently have left alone, the way it is, mayor, council, with a city administrator added to the charter? Or do we want to have a council administrator form of government?
Council manager.
Council administrator. Because it's not worded as manager anywhere. We would have to change that wording too.
So it's council manager form of government.
Okay. So that means we have to change all the wording everywhere.
No, you could still have a city administrator, I mean, just, you could have a manager, administrator, just don't call them late to lunch.
Okay.
It's semantics.
I get called late to lunch.
I'm voting yes.
Okay. Yes.
Yes, for
For-
which
for-
one?
For the
second.
council, manager, administrator. Okay. So you're officially for leaving it as
I'm
is and,
officially for leaving it as is.
but
For
adding
council
it,
form.
but adding the administrator.
That I think we could get into some job description, yes.
Okay.
Just like under mayor and,
For what it's worth, Quinn, I was on this short stint last week.
that's okay. That's why we do this.
Right.
I think we had a great conversation last week.
You did.
We did, we did.
There's arguments, very good arguments on both sides.
Yeah.
Right, right.
And
Watch your
at the
listing.
beginning of this, I was actually I was really leaning towards keeping it as is and adding the city administrator. But listening to Mel and listening to Mark and, you know, I feel like, and hearing everything, we're already kind of there. So let's just go ahead and jump in and make the change. I mean, that's why we come here with our ideas. We come here with our ideas and what we're thinking, and then we listen to everybody and make a decision. So, okay, so moving forward then, what we need to do is go through the articles.
Jennifer, I'm sorry.
Ma'am.
I was writing when y'all were raising your hand, so
I'm sorry.
I did not see who raised your hand. So,
Mel, myself, Gary, and Lee all raised our hands for
Steve.
Steve, excuse me, Steve.
You can call me Ray, or
My husband say you.
yes,
No,
don't call me late for lunch.
we all raised our hands for the council manager.
Okay.
And Quinn was for leaving it as is mayor council with the city administrator added to the charter.
okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, so let's go back to our review of our sections. As we kind of did last week, we've all took our time and read through the ones that we had for today. I know we jumped around a little bit last week, but let's just go straight through. So, 2.06, I think we reviewed through here, but let's just double check. Vacancies, forfeiture of office.
Wouldn't we need to change at least 1 year to 2 years? Didn't we change the requirement to 2 years?
That was,
Yes.
For
that was a
non-qualification.
recommendation.
Yeah, make
Yes.
a recommendation, so then wouldn't this need to be changed for, or maybe not?
Are you talking vacancies then?
Yeah, under vacancies.
Well, I think if we go to the 4-year term, I think changing the vacancies is appropriate, because the way it is now, the council appoints someone for that vacancy, and conceivably, that could last for 3+ years if someone gets elected and then passes away or something. And I think that's a little too much. I think there should be something added to, if there's less than 2 years left on a 4-year term, the appointment is okay. But if it's more than 2 years, it needs to go to the next election.
Okay, I see what you're talking about. I was actually talking about the paragraph before that, have resided within the corporate city limits for at least 1 year prior to Davis' appointment, which is really negligible, so we can just move on to what you were saying. So, yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I can see somebody serving 3.5 years as an appointee.
Yeah, that just flies in the face of the voters.
Yeah,
So basically, you would have to have a special election.
Special and/or the next election,
Just the
depending
next
on
election.
timing.
Right, because with a 4-year term, we'll be having elections every 2 years instead of every year.
Right, but the next election could be not so much
For that
for that
seat,
seat. It could be like, if there's an election for president
right,
in November, then you could have, that could be the next
Or-
election.
a congressional seat every 2 years, so,
Right.
right, that's a good point.
So we're gonna change, recommend changing second paragraph, whenever 3 or more vacancies shall occur at the same time. I think I got lost here, and I apologize for that. First paragraph. So Lisa, you're talking about the last sentence of the first paragraph, 1
Yeah,
year
that's what I
prior to
was
the date
talking
of this
about.
appointment.
Yeah,
Needs
but
to-
that's, basically a negligible thing, it's just sort of, but Mel's point is bigger, and his was
Yeah,
dealing with the vacancy there, which is in that first paragraph.
so how do we want to reword that, Mel?
Just a matter of language.
Okay,
We've got other examples of other charters, and it's not hard.
okay. Let me make a note here.
Just how this happened one time in Port St. Joe, we had
Okay.
a charter states that if a commissioner commits a crime while in office, they forfeit their office. And we had that exact situation with the commissioner that had just got elected. We had 2-year terms there. And so what the commission did is they appointed somebody. But even though it really wouldn't have been 2 years till that term was out, just at the very next election, he basically served a year and had to be reelected again. That's my only example of something like that.
All right, so we're gonna work on the language of 2.06, all right? 2.07, the mayor, we went through that, we kind of jumped to that last week, but let's just go back through it really quick and make sure we're all still on the same page. The sentence we're talking about removing is almost 2/3 of the way down. The mayor shall be chief elected administrative and fiscal official for the city. That is the one that we decided was going to be presented to be removed. Okay. Anything else in that paragraph that needs to be adjusted? All right, moving on. Section 2.08, Mayor Pro Tem. I didn't see anything in there. Anybody else? Nope. 2.09.
Wait,
Oh,
I have a question.
yes.
At the very end of 2.08, and it says a 2/3 vote of the membership. What's 2/3 of 5? Can that not be spelled out to either a vote of 3 or a vote of 4 or whatever 2/3 comes out to? Because, I'm sorry, I'm bad at math, but it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Where are you reading?
It's under C. A 2/3 vote of the membership of the council is required to enact an emergency ordinance. I'm just asking. It's on page,
That's 2.09.
Oh, you're looking at
We're
2.09.
on 208.
oh, am I? I thought we
You're
were on
ahead of us just a
2.09.
little
Just-
bit.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
That's
It's
okay.
okay, along with you.
When we get there, somebody explain to me how you get 2/3 of 5.
3 or more.
So it is 3 or more. Okay, I don't know if it's 3 or
2/3 would
4.
begin.
All right.
All right, sections A, B, or C, other than that, anything in there?
When it comes to the meetings and procedures, should the charter go so detailed as to specify which day of the week the council meets?
It also says that they can change it at any time by resolution.
Right. But why even have it in the charter if that's the case?
I agree, it should just say meetings shall be set by the council by resolution.
At what time, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think specifying a day is too detailed for a charter. So I recommend taking that reference out.
So council shall meet regularly at such time as prescribed by resolution.
Things change over time.
Everybody in agreement with that? Okay with us taking that little bit of that sentence out or recommending it be taken out? Any objections? Okay. B, procedure. C. Section 210, action requiring an ordinance. Anything?
I'm sorry, we don't go to 2/3 like Lisa talked about. Let's see. Are you gonna change that?
No.
Just,
We'll leave it at 2/3.
yeah, because 2/3 is 3 or more.
But not a majority of the quorum.
Well, 3 is the majority when you
Three.
get 5 members.
But if you have 3,
Then it
then
would
2
take,
is the majority.
and that would be 2/3.
Correct.
So it's
In
still,
that case, but with
Three's
5.
not 2/3.
But three is 3 a quorum?
3 is a
There's
quorum.
quorum.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
3 out of the 5 is 60%. 2/3 would be 66%. You would need 4 people to vote for it.
At 2/3.
Yeah.
Or greater.
So it would fail on a 3-person vote.
I think we should say majority.
You can.
I mean, don't you all agree? If it's what we've done forever, passing ordinances, 3 to 2, 4 to 1, they all pass, so long as you have a majority.
Well, I think the reason it's that way is that an emergency
Emergency
ordinance is something that's
Yeah.
a little out of regularity.
Yeah, you need
So you
like
need a
supermajority.
special, supermajority.
Okay.
Yeah.
And wouldn't a supermajority be 4? I don't know. See, this, don't do math with me, give me words.
2/3 vote. If we had 5 people there, it would require 4. If we had 4 people there, it would require 3. If we had 3 people there, it would require 2.
But that's not, that paragraph C is not talking about emergencies, is it?
Yeah, it
It
is.
says it in there.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
The other thing to keep in mind is if you have 3 members present and the vote is 2 to 1, that vote fails. Because that's not 2/3 of the membership of the body.
Oh,
Yeah, it
oh,
does say membership.
good point, good point.
Remember, this is for an emergency ordinance, not for a regular ordinance.
So it does need to remain, then, this is the emergency ordinance that we're talking, emergency.
Where does it say that? That it's an emergency.
It's required to enact an emergency ordinance.
Well, maybe we need to take that out because as Quinn says, there's a whole section on emergency ordinances.
So this may not be.
Why would we need that notation
In the meetings of procedures.
under meetings and procedures when you got 2.12?
Oh, yeah,
I
2.12.
think you're right.
12.
That's redundant.
I think we ought to just take that out. To enact
Well, I think it
an
should be-
ordinance. Now, we don't, it should say majority.
A majority.
And take out the emergency because the emergency has said it again.
A whole section.
On passing emergency ordinances.
And it's,
So the whole
and 2 to
section-
1 would count in that first part because it's, no action of the council should be valid or binding unless adopted and approved by the affirmative vote of the majority of the members of the council constituting a quorum. So a 2-1 vote would work
So
there.
just take that sentence out completely, and it'll be addressed in section
Yeah. I don't-
2.12.
I think you're right. I don't think you need the emergency.
Under regular, if you're passing a regular ordinance, right?
Wait, let me read this.
Yeah, if you take that out, because it already says approved by the affirmative vote of a majority of the members constituting quorum. That's right there.
There's a difference in between that and that second section for
Yes.
emergency.
It is, there is.
Yes.
Where he was right. The emergency ordinance, 2 to 1 vote wouldn't make it. In the one before that, it would.
Yes. So these are 2 separate matters, but we need to keep this in here because this is to enact the emergency ordinance. Here is what they're talking about. At a regular meeting, they would have a meeting, whether it be a special meeting or just a council meeting. They would come in, and correct me if I'm wrong in this, Mel, and vote to enact the emergency ordinances. So they have to have a way of knowing, or Michael may even be able to explain this too, that you have to have 2/3 of the membership to enact the emergency ordinances,
But if you look at 2.12, like,
which is what
Mr.
2.12
Cox
is
is
spells
saying.
out, or what the
Yeah.
emergency ordinances are.
and how you gotta, what it takes to pass it too.
Okay.
So do we need both?
I don't think so. I don't think we need the first one. But it's just saying the same
Or
thing
do
again.
we even want to mess with it? It's just, it's addressing the same thing.
Well, we gotta remember,
We don't
we have
have-
47 ballot initiatives.
There you go.
And some of them are just to take out a word. It's gonna get a little,
So you don't want to take 209C, that middle sentence out, and at least say, emergency ordinances, please refer to 2.12 or something.
yeah, you could just
Yeah.
leave it. But any changes that you make, gotta be voted on.
We voted on, so either leave it alone.
You could just leave it alone, it just says it
Yeah,
twice.
yeah, leave it
It
alone.
says the exact same thing, just in 2 different sections.
Okay. Leave it alone. 210, action requiring an ordinance, we're moving into that one. Anything in that jumped out at anybody? To 11, adoption of ordinances and resolutions.
When you have a reference to, this is 211, under C, when you have a reference to Florida statutes and it doesn't say which statute, yet it says state law reference down here, Florida statute, wouldn't it be clearer to make sure you have the statute number instead of just saying, oh, Florida statutes?
Well, it
Yes.
changes over time, so you don't want to put a specific number.
All right.
Anything into 11?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So let's open it. Is there anybody John, anything else? Since you're our only public here? Okay. Let's keep moving through then. 212, emergency ordinances. Nothing. Anything, anybody? 213, codes of technical regulations.
Let me ask Mel a question. This is going back a little bit, but did all of our ordinances go into effect 10 days after the passage? I thought ordinances went into effect immediately.
Unless it's specified by the ordinance itself.
Okay.
Sometimes it says upon publication, it can, different ways.
Okay.
214, signatures and authentication.
I'm sorry.
So the public can see that, right? They can go in and ask to see, just out of curiosity, so I kind of lost subject, but it's kept there and they can see it at any time?
It's on the website. It's on the ordinance.
Right.
But if they want to come in physically, they can come into my office. I have a book and they can see it at any time.
Okay, good to know. Section 215, codification. Any changes in there?
Is there a reason why we shouldn't say it's required to codify the ordinances? Because when I first came to Mexico Beach, they had been codified in the past, but they stopped. And then we had to go back and physically take out every ordinance passed during that period of time, take it to our codifiers and get them to catch us all up. So I'm afraid that if it's not in here requiring that, in the future, a council or staff could drop the ball. And I think it's beneficial to the public to have the ordinance codified, because it's in one handy place. Whereas if you gotta go ordinance 853 and, do your research that way, it gets very lumbersome, so.
It also mentions if the ordinance has been amended, and like keeps up to date,
Right.
so everybody knows exactly where it is.
And I think that may be what you're referring to on the website. It says like ordinance and then dash dash. There's no connection or link to anything. And that's what still needs to be done, is what, basically, but by hand.
Yeah, generally you codify once a year. You can do it more often than that if you want, but, for small places, it gets expensive.
So we need to spell that out in here. Once a year? What, guesstimate, what does
Well,
it run cost wise?
Maybe not put the time frame, just put that the council is required to codify the ordinances.
Instead of authorized, required?
Right.
Okay.
But if you don't put a time frame and you just let it go, what have we accomplished?
Good point, but common sense would tell you to keep it up, but common sense is not in Mexico Beach, right?
But if it's a requirement and the council's not doing it, is that not something to go back to them and hold their feet to the fire and say,
But you haven't put a
as
time limit
a
on it.
not fulfilling your duties? I'm just asking it.
Maybe just say at least annually. And they can do it more often if they want, but
It wouldn't be hard to do it annually.
no.
I mean,
Because it wouldn't be that big of a job. It
Right,
should just be a
right.
few, or not, maybe more than a few.
Right.
well, it would be probably less, even on an average year, less than 20.
Yeah. And you need to keep updated, like any amendments to any ordinances.
That did create a mess.
It wasn't that.
Okay, I've got this down, I just made notation. The council is required to provide for the preparation of a general codification of all city ordinances and resolutions of a general and permanent nature having the force and effect of law at minimum yearly. That's how I wrote it.
Good
Does
Lord,
that
if
sound
that
right?
goes on a ballot, nobody's going to.
Well, that's why I read it out loud, because sometimes reading it out loud helps.
Why couldn't
So,
you just put the word in annually,
Right.
codification annually of all city ordinances
Is
and
required.
okay,
And
Yeah, required to provide, blah, blah, blah.
I can.
So you're adding 2 words then.
Okay. Instead of general, annual, okay, got it. Okay.
But you could say the council is authorized annually to provide.
Right. Well, we want them,
what required?
we want them to
Required.
be required to do it, I think.
Annually,
So they don't wait 5 years and say, oh, we kind of let that slip through the cracks.
yeah. Okay. So the council is required annually to provide blah, blah, blah,
There
blah.
you go.
Okay.
I think it was, what, 17 years?
Oh,
That'd be a mess.
It wasn't bad.
All right.
Yeah, that-
216.
You wouldn't know what was in.
Review. Anything in there? Okay, so are we going to keep the review at 5 years?
Why
From
not?
the
We don't
effective
do it
date.
anyway.
Well, that could be another one of those. Anyway,
Does that mean that the city clerk would have to put a tickler on her calendar to say that, okay, this ordinance is adopted this day, so in 5 years I gotta review it? I don't think that
Yeah,
reviewing
is
the
there-
ordinances has any relevance at all.
Tammy's shaking her head.
You've been reviewing ordinances at every city meeting,
Exactly.
because, they're not all passed on the same day, so the
Right.
5 years is staggered.
so this is not speaking of the charter itself, okay?
No.
I thought it was the charter itself. So would we want to just remove section 216 then?
I say it's
Um,
toast.
It's 2 sentences, one sentence that's,
In my view, you just review them as they come up. If there's a problem.
As needed.
If there's a problem with an ordinance, you're gonna review it. You're gonna amend it, repeal it, you're gonna do whatever. And the codes of technical regulations, that's like the LDR and stuff like that, and we're always kind of.
No, right now it's changing all the time. Okay, so leave as is, remove, or change?
Take it out.
Take it out.
216 is long.
Take it out. All right, that was all that we were going to go through today. Any other public comments? Okay. Mark, did you have anything else that you wanted to add? Any other members?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I get somebody to, can we adjourn this meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Yes, good, thank you.
Another very productive meeting, everybody.